Right now, you might feel the quiet, persistent heat of a conscience that will not let you be. It is the kind of exhaustion that does not come from doing too much, but from constantly checking the weight of your own soul against an invisible scale. Maybe you are lying there, tracing the edges of a mistake you made weeks ago. Or perhaps you are feeling that sharp, sudden contraction in your chest when you remember a moment where you felt you fell short of who you should have been. You have been walking through your life as if every step might be a flaw in the weave, and you are terrified that if you stop looking, the entire tapestry will unravel into nothing. It is a lonely way to carry the hours. It is as if you are trying to hold every loose thread of your existence with trembling fingers, terrified that even a moment of peace would be a sign of negligence. Listen to the sound of the house around you. The air in the room is still, perhaps touched by the cooling scent of rain on dry earth, or the faint, distant hum of the world moving on without your constant supervision. You do not need to keep watch. You do not need to be the judge, the jury, and the witness of your own history. Tonight, we are going to set down the needle. We are going to allow the loom to stand idle. There is nothing in this life that requires you to be perfect before you are allowed to rest. You are not a faulty object that needs to be repaired. You are a living, breathing part of this wide and complex existence, and you are allowed to simply be, even if you are still learning how to be gentle with yourself. Maybe you came here because the noise of your own inner critique has grown too loud to ignore. It is a strange, heavy paradox that we often cling to our self-judgment as if it were a shield. We believe that if we stop blaming ourselves, we will become careless, or that if we stop reliving our errors, we will lose the very thing that makes us decent people. But there is a different way to understand this. The Buddha taught that the mind does not become clean by scrubbing it with the steel wool of regret. It becomes clean when we stop trying to control every shadow. You are currently trapped in the belief that your moral worth is a prize you must earn every day. But this is a weight you were never meant to lift. What if the knot you are so afraid of is not a sign of your ruin? What if the struggle you feel is not a symptom of a defective heart, but a natural result of trying to hold threads that were meant to move and flow? We are going to look at this together through the lens of a weaver. We are going to explore how your mind creates the very suffering you are trying so hard to avoid. You are safe here. There is no urgency. There is no standard you are failing right now. The only thing we are doing is letting the thread sag enough to see its true shape. Take a slow breath. Let the air settle deep into your lungs, and as you release it, feel the muscles in your neck and shoulders begin to unfurl. You do not have to fix your thoughts. You do not have to turn them into something beautiful. You only have to notice them, like you notice the way light shifts on the wall when a cloud passes by. Your anxiety has been a way of trying to protect yourself, a way of trying to stay ahead of the next mistake, but it has left you drained and hollow. Tonight, we will learn how to shift our relationship with the past. We will look at how the mind takes a single moment of imperfection and weaves it into a permanent identity. But we will do this slowly. We will move with the rhythm of the loom, in a pace that honors your need for silence. You do not need to understand everything in this moment. You do not need to be any different than the person you are right now. There is a profound freedom in realizing that you are not the one who determines the patterns of the entire world. You are just the weaver, working with the materials of your own life, and the silk has a way of moving that is not always under your command. This realization is the first step toward a different kind of quiet. It is the beginning of trust. You can trust that the ground beneath you is solid enough to hold your weight while you sleep. You can trust that you do not need to be the guardian of your own worth. If a thought of a failure arises, do not reach for it. Do not pull it tighter. Let it be what it is, a thread passing through the fingers of your awareness. It does not need to be untangled tonight. It does not need to be perfect. The loom is meant to rest at the end of the day. The shuttle can be set aside. The thread can hang loose. You have spent so long feeling that your worth is held together by the tension of your own worry. But the tension is what breaks the thread. It is the grip that snaps the delicate silk. When you finally release that pressure, you find that the fabric is stronger than you knew, and your hands, finally still, can learn the feeling of being empty and at peace. There is no final exam in this quiet, no hidden test of your character. You are here to breathe. You are here to exist in the stillness of the room, and everything else, the tasks, the memories, the lingering questions about who you should be, they can wait for the morning. They have no place in the dark. They have no place in this sanctuary. We are just beginning to unfold this, and there is no need to rush toward any conclusion. Your heart is already doing the work of carrying you through the night. The silence is waiting to hold whatever you are ready to put down. Let the world outside this room fade into a memory. Let the demands of the day become as distant as the stars. You are here. You are enough. And you are finally beginning to see that the weight you have been carrying is a burden that the night is more than happy to take from you. In a high valley where the air remains thin and crisp, there once lived a weaver named Eamon. His hut stood on a ridge overlooking a river that hummed with the constant motion of mountain snowmelt. Eamon was known throughout the mountain villages for the exquisite quality of his cloth. His tapestry was sought after by those who desired perfection, but the work came at a steep, silent price. Eamon sat at his loom from the moment the first gray light touched the peaks until the shadows stretched long across the valley floor. He worked with a heavy wooden shuttle that had been polished to a shine by decades of his own nervous, restless hands. The wood was dark and worn, shaped by the pressure of fingers that never seemed to know how to let go. Eamon's struggle was not with the loom, but with the thread. Whenever he encountered a slight irregularity in the silk, a small nub or a momentary snag, he would stop his work. He would spend hours with a small, jagged needle, trying to pull the knot apart, trying to make the thread perfectly uniform. He believed that if he left a single knot, the entire tapestry would be deemed unworthy. He believed that he was the only thing standing between his reputation and total disaster. As the years passed, the skin on his fingertips became rough and his posture curved to match the arch of the loom. He lived in a state of perpetual vigilance, constantly scanning for the next imperfection. One autumn afternoon, a traveler arrived at the hut. He was not a person of status, just a man carrying a pack of dried herbs and a walking staff of mountain ash. The traveler did not ask for food or shelter. He simply stood at the doorway, watching the way Eamon's shoulders were hunched, seeing how the weaver's breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. Eamon did not look up, for he was busy obsessing over a tiny tangle in a spool of crimson silk. The weaver's face was etched with the strain of 1,000 small, frantic corrections. He was so caught up in the task of untying the knot that he did not hear the traveler enter the room. The traveler walked to the side of the loom and reached out a hand. Eamon recoiled, his pulse jumping as if he had been struck. He looked at the stranger with wide, tired eyes, his hand still gripping the shuttle as if it were a weapon. The traveler smiled, but it was a quiet, unhurried expression that did not demand anything from the weaver. He picked up a loose strand of silk from the floor and let it fall through his open palm. He asked Eamon why he was fighting the thread so fiercely. The weaver pointed to the small snag in the crimson silk. His voice tight and brittle, he explained that a flawed tapestry was an honest sign of a flawed soul. The traveler moved to the front of the loom and sat on a low stool. He did not touch the work. He merely watched the way Eamon held his breath. Whenever the shuttle passed back and forth, the traveler reached into his satchel and produced a smooth, round stone from the riverbed below. He placed it on the floor between them. He asked Eamon to stop, just for the time it took to let a single bird fly past the window. Eamon hesitated, his hands hovering over the silk as if he were afraid the loom would collapse if he withdrew his touch, but he stopped. The room suddenly filled with the sound of the river outside, a constant, rushing rhythm that seemed to mock the tension held within the walls. The traveler pointed to the stone. He told Eamon that the river had tumbled this stone for centuries, rubbing it against other stones, against sand, against the force of the water. He asked the weaver if he thought the river was trying to untie the stone. Eamon looked at the smooth, water-worn surface of the stone and felt a strange, cold shiver of recognition. He saw that the stone was beautiful, not because it was perfect, but because it had endured the friction of the world. The weaver looked back at his tapestry, then down at his own hands, and for the first time in his life, he let the shuttle drop to the floor with a dull, heavy thud. The traveler said nothing more. He stood up, adjusted his pack, and walked back out into the cool mountain air. He did not offer a grand lesson. He did not tell Eamon what he must do next. He simply left the stone on the floor, a quiet weight of stillness in a room that had known only the frantic motion of correction. Eamon sat alone for a long time. The light began to fade from the walls, and the room grew dark, but he did not pick up the needle. He did not reach for the snag in the silk. He sat with his hands resting on his knees, feeling the strange, heavy ache of a heart that was finally deciding to stop its war. This story, like the rhythm of your own breath, holds a secret that is not meant to be grasped with force. It is not asking you to throw away your work or to abandon your responsibilities. It is pointing toward the way you hold the thread. When you are caught in the grip of anxiety, you are like Eamon with his jagged needle, trying to remove every knot, trying to curate your own past and your own character until there is no room left for the messiness of being alive. You have been treating your own mistakes as if they were stains that could be scrubbed away. But the scrubbing is what creates the fraying. Think about the shuttle in Eamon's hand. It was an extension of his own tension, a tool that had become a cage. You have your own version of this shuttle. It might be the way you mentally review your day, checking for things you said that were not quite right. It might be the way you prepare for tomorrow, anticipating every possible failure so that you can strike it down before it happens. This constant preparation feels like protection. It feels like you are being responsible. But in the silence of the night, when you are finally allowed to set the shuttle down, you might realize that the work was never as fragile as your fear led you to believe. You do not have to untangle the history of your life to be worthy of peace. You do not have to provide a perfectly woven cloth to the world to justify your existence. The traveler did not tell Eamon to stop weaving. He only asked him to stop fighting the silk. This distinction is the threshold we are walking toward. It is the realization that the knot is not the enemy of the tapestry, but a part of its structure. The moments where you felt you failed, the moments where you were not as graceful or as kind or as capable as you wished, they are the very threads that hold your current awareness together. Let your hands relax on the fabric of your bed. Notice how they want to grasp, how they want to arrange the covers or check the weight of your own body. This is the weaver's instinct. It is the desire to maintain the surface. But tonight, you are not a weaver. You are the space in which the weaving occurs. You are the stillness that allows the loom to exist. If a worry crosses your mind, notice it. Watch it pass like the thread through the loom. You do not have to correct it. You do not have to pull it taut. You can let the tension go. The river outside Eamon's hut never stopped its motion, and yet it never grew tired. It did not need to perfect its own current. It simply followed the path carved by the valley, over the stones and through the earth. You are part of that same ancient path. The things that have happened to you, the mistakes you have held on to, they have smoothed you in their own way. They have given you a texture that a flawless life would never have. There is a depth in your heart that can only come from having weathered the friction of the world. There is no rush to find the meaning of this story tonight. Sometimes the best way to understand a truth is to let it sit in the dark, like a seed waiting for the right moment to open. You have been carrying this worry for a long time, and you cannot expect it to dissolve in a single hour. But you can give it permission to stop being a command. You can let the shuttle lie still. You can let the needle stay in the cloth. You can be someone who is resting, rather than someone who is constantly preparing for the next snag in the thread. The room you are in is safe. The walls are solid. The night air is cool and steady. Everything you have worried about is held in the safety of this moment, which is already passing into the past. You are not losing anything by letting go. You're only clearing the space that you need to truly be here. Allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm, moving in and out, like the tide or the pulse of the river. There is nothing to fix. There is no one to impress. There is only the quiet, unfolding reality of you, lying in the dark, finally free to stop the work. This story of the weaver and his jagged needle is not a call for you to abandon your craft, nor is it suggesting that you should no longer care about the quality of the life you build. It is not asking you to become indifferent or to turn away from the responsibilities you hold dear. Instead, it is inviting you to look at the way you handle the thread. When Eamon reached for that needle to pick at a small snag, he was not just trying to fix a piece of silk. He was trying to prove to himself that he could control every detail of his existence. And in that frantic effort, he accidentally began to undo the very tapestry he sought to perfect. You have likely done this 1,000 times. You encounter a moment of difficulty, a mistake you made, a word spoken with too much heat, or a choice that did not yield the outcome you hoped for. This is the initial snag in the silk. It is a natural part of living, for no thread is perfectly uniform from start to finish. But then, the mind, the part of you that is terrified of being seen as flawed, reaches for the jagged needle. You begin to pick at the snag. You replay the memory over and over, sharpening your critique, convinced that if you only look at it closely enough, or if you only suffer over it long enough, you can somehow erase the imperfection. This is where the second layer of suffering is born. The first experience is the snag itself, which is often painful enough on its own. But the second layer is the internal narrative you build around it, the voice that tells you that this imperfection defines who you are. This is the act of turning a simple, messy human moment into a permanent stain on your character. You become the weaver who is so afraid of the knot that he stops the loom entirely, spending his precious hours pulling at threads until the fabric grows thin and frayed. You are not protecting your work by doing this. You are wearing it out. When the traveler asked Eamon if the river was trying to untie the stone, he was pointing toward a deeper rhythm that exists underneath the surface of our frantic efforts. The river does not need to fix the stones it tumbles. It trusts the weight of the water and the passage of time to shape the world. You are not meant to be a weaver who operates with ironclad perfection. You are meant to be a human being, which means you are designed to learn, to change, and occasionally to stumble. The snag in your silk is not a sign of failure. It is simply evidence that the thread has been moving, that you have been engaging with the world, and that you are present in the middle of your own life. The struggle you feel when you overthink is not a sign that you are a bad person. It is a sign that you are trying to use your mind to solve problems that cannot be solved through force. We often believe that if we worry enough, we can prevent future mistakes. We believe that if we punish ourselves for past errors, we are somehow performing a righteous duty. But this is a misunderstanding of how the heart actually heals. True integrity does not grow in the soil of self-judgment. It grows in the soil of clear, honest awareness. It grows when you can look at the knot in your tapestry and say, yes, that is where I was tired. Yes, that is where I was afraid. And yes, I am still capable of moving forward. Consider what happens when you decide to set the needle down. You do not stop being a person who wants to do good. You do not stop being someone who values kindness or excellence. You simply stop the cycle of internal wounding. You allow the thread to remain as it is, accepting that the tapestry of your life will have irregularities, gaps, and unexpected textures. When you give yourself this permission, you are not lowering your standards. You are simply expanding your capacity to hold the reality of being human. You are acknowledging that you are not the one who determines every outcome, and you are realizing that you do not need to be. This Buddhist insight is subtle, yet it changes everything. It suggests that peace is not found by clearing away all the knots, but by shifting your relationship to them. It is the practice of becoming the watcher, the one who notices the weaver at the loom without needing to interfere with every single motion of the shuttle. When you are caught in the grip of anxiety, you are entirely identified with the weaver. You are the one who is panicked. You are the one who is holding the needle. But there is a deeper part of you that is always present, a space that is not the weaver, but the silence in which the weaving takes place. That space is where your true rest is found. It is the place that can notice your anxiety without becoming anxiety. It is the place that can see your self-criticism without believing it is the absolute truth. You have spent so much energy trying to tidy up your internal world that you have forgotten how to simply inhabit it. You have been so busy picking at the snags that you have neglected to enjoy the warmth of the sun or the feeling of the silk in your hands. Tonight, you are invited to reclaim that space. You are invited to see that the knots in your history are not monsters to be hunted. They are just parts of a pattern that is much larger than you can see in the heat of a moment. it is helpful to realize that much of the suffering we endure comes from the way we treat our own pain as a mistake. We treat sadness as if it were a failure of our ability to be happy. We treat anger as if it were a breach in our moral standing. We treat fatigue as if it were a refusal to work. We add layers of judgment to every experience until we are buried under the weight of our own interpretations. But if you can stop that adding, if you can just sit with the initial feeling as it arises, you will see something remarkable. The feeling eventually moves on. The emotion eventually passes, just as the water flows past the stone. The weaver Eamon had to drop the shuttle to see the stone. He had to stop the motion to see the stillness. Maybe tonight you can practice the same. You do not have to discard your thoughts, and you do not have to struggle to be blank. Just notice when you are reaching for the needle. Notice that familiar, sharp urge to go back into the past and pick at the threads. When you notice that urge, that is the moment of your freedom. You have seen the pattern. You have witnessed the habit, and in the very act of witnessing, you have already started to change. You do not need to solve the knots of your life tonight. That is a task for another time. If it is even a task that needs doing at all. Right now, your only work is to be the one who notices. You are the one who feels the cool air in the room. You are the one who hears the slow, steady rhythm of your own heart. You are the one who is finally learning that you can survive your own imperfections. You are a vast, unfolding process, and you are held by a world that accepts your knots as readily as it accepts your successes. As the room darkens and the boundaries of the day begin to blur, let this realization sink deep into your bones. You are not the mistakes you have made, and you are not the knots you have worried over. You are the awareness that is here to witness it all. You are the vast, quiet loom, and you are doing just fine, exactly as you are, with all your beautiful, messy, and perfectly human threads. Let the shuttle rest. Let the needle lie where it may. The work that truly matters is not in the perfecting of the silk, but in the gentle, deepening peace of the one who weaves it. If it feels right, let us step into the quiet space of this practice. You do not need to sit upright. You do not need to concentrate. You only need to be exactly as you are, lying in the dark, letting the weight of your body be supported by the surface beneath you. Start by taking a breath that is not designed to be deep or perfect. Just let the air enter your lungs and leave them, following its own natural rhythm. Feel the way your belly rises and falls, a gentle motion that has been with you since your first moment of life. You are not trying to change your breath. You are simply noticing it, the way a weaver notices the tension of the silk before the shuttle begins to move. Bring your attention to your jaw, your forehead, and your shoulders. Notice if there is a subtle, habitual gripping there, a way you hold your muscles tight against the world. On your next exhale, invite them to soften. Let them sag. Imagine that the tension you have been carrying is like a thread that has been pulled far too tight, and now you are simply allowing it to return to its natural slack state. You do not have to force this. You are not a machine that needs adjustment. You are a person, and you deserve this moment of total unburdened presence. Now, invite a specific thought into your awareness. Perhaps it is a worry about a choice you made yesterday, or a lingering sense of guilt that refuses to fade. You might notice it as a sharp, repetitive tugging in your mind, a snag in the smooth flow of your evening. Do not reach for your needle. Do not try to pick at it or untangle it. Just hold the thought in the light of your awareness. Name it quietly to yourself if that helps. You might call it by its name, worry or regret or the fear of being seen as less than enough. Notice how it feels in your body. Does it create a tightness in the chest, a fluttering in the stomach, a pressure behind the eyes? Imagine that in front of you, there is the wide, empty loom of your own consciousness. See the warp threads, long and steady, stretching out into the dark, in your mind. Take that thought, that snag you have been holding, and gently place it onto the surface of the weave. You do not have to push it into place. You do not have to fix it. Just leave it there, resting on the threads, as if it were a single, textured bead or a small, knotted piece of wool. Watch it from a distance. See it for what it is, just one small element in the vast, ongoing work of your life. You might notice that the thought wants to move, that it wants to demand your attention again. That is perfectly fine. The mind is a busy weaver, and it often returns to the same pattern out of habit. When you see it trying to pick up the needle, simply observe it. Say to yourself, there is the habit of wanting to fix things. There is the urge to make the tapestry perfect. You are not blaming yourself for this urge. You are simply witnessing it, the way the traveler witnessed Eamon at his loom. You can offer yourself a small, inner gesture of compassion. Imagine placing your hand over your heart, or just resting your hands comfortably at your sides. Silently say to the snag, I see you, I know you are there. I do not have to fight you tonight. I am allowed to rest even with you present. By doing this, you are shifting your identity. You are no longer the weaver panicked by the knot. You are the space where the weaving occurs, a space vast enough to contain both the smooth silk and the rough, tangled edges. As you lie here, feel the sensation of letting the thread go slack. You do not have to pull it taut to make it real. You do not have to obsess over it to keep it from unraveling. The tapestry of your life is being woven by forces far larger than your individual worries. Your mistakes and your struggles are already part of the pattern, and they are not strong enough to destroy the weave. They are just the texture of your human experience. They are what make the cloth unique. If you find that your mind has wandered, if you find yourself back in the habit of picking at the threads, that is not a failure. It is just a return to the loom. You can simply notice, return to the breath, and watch as the thought sits quietly on the weave. You are safe. You are held by the silence of the room. Nothing is required of you but this simple act of noticing. You are practicing the art of the traveler, the art of the mountain stone, the art of simply being present without the need to correct. You might feel a sudden, quiet shift in your chest, a softening that comes when you stop the war. It is not a dramatic event, and there is no need for a breakthrough. It is simply the feeling of letting go of the needle. It is the feeling of realizing that you have been holding your breath to keep the tapestry perfect. And now, you are finally allowing yourself to exhale. The loom is still, the shuttle is at rest, the silk is lying loose and open in the dark. Trust this process. It is a slow, deepening movement, not a quick fix. You are teaching your nervous system that it is okay to be unfinished. You are teaching your heart that it is okay to be unpolished. You are becoming a person who can sit in the dark, with all your knots and snags, and still feel a profound, quiet sense of worthiness. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to the person you already are, underneath all the layers of judgment you have spent a lifetime applying. The night is long, and the valley is quiet. You have nowhere else to be. You have no one else to please. Let the practice of noticing be enough for now. If you feel sleepy, let that feeling be the next thread in the weave. If you feel restless, let that feeling be a thread as well. You are the weaver of your own awareness, and you are learning with every gentle breath how to sit at the loom with open hands. You are safe enough to soften, safe enough to surrender, and safe enough to let the work of the day fall away into the quiet, cooling air. Years later, Eamon the weaver had grown into an old man. The mountain air still held its sharpness, and the river still rushed with the same relentless, tumbling energy. His hut remained a place of quiet, though the frantic pace that once defined his days had long since settled into a different kind of rhythm. He still worked at his loom, for he was a weaver, and that was his place in the world. But the jagged needle that had once been his constant companion now lay inside a small wooden box on a high shelf, covered in a thin layer of dust. He no longer spent his afternoons chasing snags or picking at the tiny imperfections in his silk. He had learned through the slow, steady erosion of time and the simple act of breathing that the tapestry was strong enough to hold its own history. One evening, a young woman arrived at his door. She was not a traveler like the one who had brought him the river stone, but a student from the village below. She had been sent to Eamon because her own work was failing. She was a woodcarver, skilled in the fine details, but she was haunted by a profound, gnawing anxiety that every mistake she made was a permanent mark of her worthlessness. She sat at his low table, her hands trembling as she touched the edge of the grain. She told Eamon that she had spent the last week trying to carve a simple bowl, but every time the chisel slipped, she felt a wave of cold dread. She could not finish the piece. She was paralyzed by the belief that a single slip meant she was not a true carver at all. Eamon watched her, noticing the way her eyes darted toward the tools in her bag as if they were threats. He did not say anything for a long time. He went to the corner of his hut and picked up a piece of his own work, a large, heavy tapestry he had woven during a particularly difficult season of his life. He spread it out on the floor. It was filled with knots, snags, and places where the thread had been pulled too tight. The young carver looked at it, confused, expecting to see the flawless silk for which Eamon was once so famous. Instead, she saw the reality of the work. She saw the places where Eamon had been tired, the places where he had been uncertain, and the places where he had simply allowed the weave to be as it was. Eamon picked up a pair of shears. He reached for the tapestry, and with a slow, deliberate motion, cut a small, jagged section right out of the middle of the work. The student gasped. She looked at him as if he had destroyed something sacred. Eamon simply smiled, a look of profound, unhurried peace crossing his face. He explained that this piece of cloth had been his constant worry for months. Every knot represented a night he had spent awake, terrified that his failure would be discovered. Every snag was a moment he had spent hating himself for not being perfect. By cutting it away, he was not trying to erase the past. He was acknowledging that the past was already gone. The young carver looked at the hole in the tapestry, and then at Eamon's calm, steady hands. She realized that the weaver was not holding the cloth together through his own vigilance, but through his acceptance of its nature. She reached into her own bag and pulled out the unfinished bowl. There was a deep, uneven gouge where the chisel had slipped. In the past, she would have thrown the wood into the fire. She would have called herself a failure and walked away from the work entirely. But as she sat in the stillness of the weaver's hut, listening to the rhythm of the river, she felt the urge to fix it begin to fade. She took the chisel, and instead of trying to smooth over the gouge, she began to carve around it. She worked with the wood, acknowledging the mistake as part of the grain. She did not try to hide the slip. She transformed the error into a feature of the design, turning the deep gouge into a small, decorative curve that followed the natural flow of the material. It took her several hours, and she did not rush. She stopped every few minutes to breathe, to feel the weight of the wood, and to remind herself that she was not the chisel, nor was she the gouge. She was simply the one who was present with the work. When she finished, the bowl was not the perfect piece she had envisioned at the start. It was something else entirely. It was a bowl that carried the mark of her struggle, but it was also a bowl that was finished. She held it out to Eamon, her hands finally steady. He looked at the curve she had made and nodded. He did not praise the craftsmanship, and he did not comment on the mistake. He simply acknowledged the effort of the one who had finally stopped fighting. The student felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a weight she had not realized she was carrying until the moment it fell away. This was not a miracle. She did not leave the hut as a master carver who would never make a mistake again. She would slip with her chisel many more times. She would feel that cold, sharp dread many more times. But something had changed in the way she held her life. She now knew that the mistake did not have to be the end. She knew that she had the capacity to breathe, to pause, and to meet her own imperfection with a quiet, compassionate hand. She had learned to distinguish between the pain of the error and the suffering of the judgment. Think about the young woman and her bowl. She was suffering because she was trying to force the wood to be something that didn't exist, a carving without a history. You are doing the same thing with your own life. You are holding your own past and your own character as if they were wood that could only be one thing, perfect and smooth. But the truth is, you are the carver, and you are also the wood. You are the one who makes the mistakes, and you are the one who has the capacity to work with them, to shape them, and to integrate them into the tapestry of your existence. The transformation you are looking for is not in the elimination of your snags. It is in the ability to hold the needle without needing to pull the thread. It is in the ability to hold the chisel without needing to cut away the parts of yourself that you have labeled as bad. This requires a level of courage you might not feel you possess right now. But notice the student. She did not need to be strong. She only needed to be willing to stop the war for a single afternoon. She only needed to be willing to sit in the presence of someone who had already done the work of letting go. You are here, in the quiet of this room, doing exactly that. You are in the presence of a teaching that asks nothing of you but your presence. You do not have to leave here as someone who has conquered all their demons. You do not have to walk out into your life with a perfect finished bowl. You only have to walk out as someone who has practiced, for a few hours in the dark, the art of being gentle with the rough edges of your own soul. You have seen that the snags are not the end of the world. You have seen that they are, in fact, where the light can finally begin to touch the weave. Consider the way the young woman breathed when she finally decided to work with the gouge instead of against it. She didn't become a different person. She just became a person who was less afraid. That fear of being exposed, that fear of being found out, that fear of being fundamentally flawed, it is an exhausting way to live. It requires a constant, background hum of vigilance that never allows the system to settle. But when you stop, when you finally allow the gouge to be there, when you finally allow the knot in the silk to exist without an apology, the vigilance begins to dissolve. You are not being asked to embrace your mistakes in a way that ignores their impact on your life. This is not about carelessness. This is about clarity. When you are no longer blinded by the need to be perfect, you can see your life with much greater honesty. You can take responsibility for your actions without having to carry the soul-crushing weight of self-hatred. You can apologize, you can make amends, and you can learn, all while remaining grounded in the quiet knowledge that your fundamental worth remains untouched by your performance. The weaver's tapestry with its jagged hole was not a ruin. It was a sign of a life that had finally become honest. You have the same opportunity. Tonight, as you lie in the dark, think about the parts of your life that you have been trying so hard to hide or to fix. Think about the mistakes you have been carrying, as if they were stones in a basket you are forbidden to put down. Imagine yourself, just for a moment, setting the basket on the floor. You don't have to throw the stones away. You don't have to pretend they aren't there. You only have to let them sit, separate from your own hands, separate from your own identity. This is the deeper transformation. It is not the removal of the stones, but the realization that you are not the stones. You are the space in which they rest. You are the one who is witnessing the basket. And because you are the witness, you are also the one who can decide when it is time to rest. You have spent so long being the guardian of your own flaws that you have forgotten what it feels like to be the owner of your own peace. That is a heavy, unnecessary job, and you have been doing it for far too long. Tonight, you can resign. You can let the young carver finish her bowl, and you can let the weaver finish his tapestry, and you can let yourself simply drift into the quiet. There is no one who expects you to be perfect. The world does not need you to be a flawless piece of wood. It needs you to be present, to be kind when you can, to be honest when it matters, and to be gentle when you stumble. And beneath all that, it needs you to know that you are already whole. Even with all the gouges and the snags that life has left upon your heart, the transformation is already happening. In the way you are listening, in the way you are breathing, and in the way you are finally, at long last, allowing yourself to be tired. When we speak of the loom and the thread, we are really speaking about the way your mind constructs the reality of who you are. You see, the mind has a relentless habit of wanting to secure the weave. It looks at the tapestry of your life, and it sees 1,000 places where things did not go according to plan. It sees the knots where you were impulsive, the frayed edges where you were hurt, and the uneven tension where you were afraid. Because the mind believes that perfection is the only shield against future pain. It begins to obsess over these details. It tries to tighten the thread. It tries to pull the fabric into a shape that it deems acceptable. This is the hidden mechanism of your suffering. You are not suffering because you have made mistakes. You are suffering because you have decided that those mistakes are evidence of a fundamental defect in your character. You have turned your history into an identity. You have decided that because you felt fear, you are a fearful person, and because you made a wrong turn, you are a lost soul. This is the act of pulling the thread so tight that it can no longer move with the rhythm of life. You have become so focused on the knots that you have forgotten that the tapestry itself is made of nothing but moving, changing, and temporary silk. Consider the energy it takes to maintain this constant, internal surveillance. It is a massive expenditure of your spirit. You are constantly scanning your own thoughts, looking for anything that might be out of place, preparing a defense for a jury that exists only inside your own head. This is why you are so tired. You are not tired because life is too much to bear. You are tired because you are trying to be the gatekeeper of your own reality, attempting to prevent the messiness of being human from ever showing on the surface of your cloth. But what if you allowed the weave to be exactly what it is? What if the knots were not something to be excised, but were simply the markers of where you were brave enough to keep going? When you stop trying to control the pattern, you stop the internal war. You begin to see that the feeling of shame, that sharp, hot sensation that tells you that you are fundamentally broken, is just a thought. It is not a command. It is not a mirror reflecting your true nature. It is a fleeting pattern in the thread, one that appeared because you were trying to hold on to something you were meant to release. There is a profound difference between the pain of living and the suffering of your reaction to it. Life will bring us snags. We will lose things we love. We will be misunderstood. We will face moments of confusion, and we will feel the weight of our own limitations. This is the first kind of pain. It is the texture of reality. It is the friction that polishes the stone. But then, the mind adds a second layer. It says this should not be happening. It says I am a failure for letting this happen. It says I must ensure this never happens again. That second layer, that constant resistance to what is the root of your exhaustion. You do not have to remove the friction, tough piece. You only have to stop using the friction as a reason to hate yourself. Imagine if the weaver sat at his loom and, every time the thread caught, he began to curse his own hands. He would never get any work done, and his heart would be full of bitterness. But if he simply felt the snag, paused for a moment to notice it, and then guided the thread onward, the tapestry would continue to grow. He would be doing the work of his life, even with the irregularities. He would be present, even in the middle of the mess. You are the weaver, not the tapestry. You are the space in which the thread moves. When you understand this, the fear of uncertainty loses its power over you. The mind fears the future because it thinks it needs to know the pattern before it is woven. It wants to guarantee that there will be no knots in the days ahead, but you cannot guarantee the pattern. You can only bring your attention to the current thread. You can only work with what is here right now in your hands. And that is enough. It has always been enough. Think about the way you rehearse your own history, replaying the moments where you think you went wrong. You do this because you hope that by analyzing the error, you can prevent it from defining you. But the more you replay it, the more you solidify it as the central part of your identity. You are weaving the mistake into the permanent fabric of your self-concept. You are choosing to keep the knot at the very center of your gaze. What would happen if you simply let the memory pass through, like the shadow of a cloud passing over the valley? What if you acknowledged the error, learned the lesson, and then let the weaver simply return to the work? God, you are not your mistakes. You are the one who is witnessing them. You are the one who is learning to be compassionate toward the person who made them. This is the shift that changes everything. It is a shift from being the judge of your own history to being the witness of your own unfolding. When you are the witness, you do not need to fix the past. You only need to notice how it influences your present. You can see the fear, you can feel the shame, and you can understand that these are just visitors. They are not the landlord of your heart. This is the great, quiet freedom of the path. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to have knots and snags and frayed ends in your life. And you are still worthy of every ounce of peace, every breath of rest, and every moment of joy that exists in the world. You do not have to prove your worth to anyone, not even to yourself. You are here, in the vast, quiet loom of existence. And that alone is a miracle that needs no justification. Notice how your body feels as you hear these words. Perhaps you feel a sense of relief, or perhaps you feel a bit of resistance, a voice in your head saying, "But what if I let go and everything falls apart?" That voice is the weaver who has spent so long in fear that he cannot imagine a life without his own vigilance. It is a natural part of the process. You do not have to defeat that voice. You do not have to silence it. Just notice it. See that it is just another thread, a very tight, very anxious thread that has been woven into your system. You can let it stay there, and you can also let it be loose. You can let it be part of the weave, without needing to be the one who directs it. This is the practice of being gentle with your own humanity. It is the realization that you are not a damaged object, but a living process. You are the river and you are the stone. You are the weaver and you are the thread. There is no separation between who you are and the way you live. So, why fight against the way the thread has been moving? Why fight against the patterns that have already been set? The only work that remains is to see them, to hold them in your awareness, and to breathe through the moments where the mind tries to grab the needle and pull everything tight. As you lie in the dark, let the weight of this truth settle into you. You are enough. You have always been enough. You do not need to be any different than you are at this moment to deserve the rest you are about to find. The day is behind you, and the knots of the day are already becoming memories. They cannot hurt you now. They cannot demand your time or your judgment. They are just shadows on the floor. And as the room becomes even quieter, you can finally allow yourself to stop checking the weave. You can allow yourself to stop looking for the flaws. You can just let the loom be still. You can just let the weaver rest. There is a deep, ancient, and quiet peace that is waiting for you in the center of your own silence. It is not something you have to earn. It is not something you have to carve out of the world. It is simply who you are when you stop fighting to be someone else. This wisdom is not intended to remain within the walls of a quiet room or the stillness of a midnight hour. It is meant for the moments when your life feels like a tangled mess of demands, when the day is pressing against you from every side, and you feel the familiar urge to reach for that jagged needle. Think of your daily life as the place where the weaving continues, not in the silence, but in the noise, the movement, and the unpredictable turns of the world. Peace is not something you find when the world stops its demands. Peace is the quality of attention you bring to the loom while the shuttle is still flying back and forth. Perhaps you are waiting for a message that does not come, and you feel the familiar, sharp contraction in your chest. The mind immediately begins its work, creating stories about why you are being ignored or what you might have done to cause this silence. It is so easy to see this as a flaw in your own worth, but in that moment, you can pause. You can feel the weight of that expectation, and instead of letting it dictate your identity, you can acknowledge it as just another thread in the current design. You are not the weight. You are the one who is witnessing the weight. And in that tiny, momentary pause, you have already broken the cycle of adding a second wound to the first. Maybe you are lying in bed, even now, and your mind is busy replaying a mistake from yesterday. It keeps showing you the scene over and over, as if it were a performance you could edit if only you practiced the lines one more time. Notice the impulse to go back and fix the past. Feel the way your heart tightens when the memory returns. This is the weaver reaching for the needle to pick at a snag that is already set into the fabric. You do not need to do this. The mistake happened, the thread moved, and now the tapestry has grown beyond that point. By simply noticing the habit of replaying the memory, you are choosing not to feed the fire. You are letting the snag remain as it is, a part of your history, but no longer the master of your night. We all know the exhaustion of pretending to be okay when we feel heavy, or the pressure to smile even when our thoughts are far from light. We live in a world that often rewards the appearance of a flawless weave, so we learn to hide our knots. We pull the silk tight to keep the frayed edges out of sight. But this performance is what truly wears us out. It is not the life itself that drains the spirit, but the constant need to present an image that is different from our reality. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to admit that some threads are messy, some are loose, and some have become knotted through no fault of your own. When you compare your life to others, or when you feel that you are falling behind in some invisible race, remind yourself that you are not competing with anyone else's tapestry. You are living your own, and it has its own pace, its own texture, and its own unique set of challenges. The feeling of not being enough is a common snag, a thread that has been pulled tight by the expectations of the world. But that feeling is not a truth. It is just a recurring pattern in the mind. When you notice it arising, you can simply breathe through the tension. You do not have to fight the feeling, and you do not have to agree with it. You can just let it exist like a passing shadow. while you continue to live your own life, step by step, stitch by stitch. It is a common habit to check the phone, to seek external reassurance, or to look for an answer that will finally make you feel safe. We think that if we can just gather enough information, or if we can just hear the right word, the anxiety will vanish. But look at how this only fuels the need for more checking. It is a hunger that cannot be satisfied by the world outside. The sense of safety you are looking for is already waiting in the place you have been avoiding, which is the quiet center of your own awareness. When you feel that urge to check, pause, breathe into the feeling of uncertainty. You can exist in the middle of a question without needing to provide an immediate answer, trying to control a relationship, or trying to manage the way others perceive you. Is like trying to weave a tapestry while the wind is blowing on the threads. You cannot control the movement of the air. You can only hold your end of the thread with care. You can be kind, you can be honest, and you can be present, but you cannot dictate how the weave will unfold. This realization, while it may feel scary at first, is the gateway to genuine freedom. It releases you from the burden of being responsible for outcomes that were never yours to manage. You might feel guilty for wanting to rest, or you might believe that you have to earn your right to be peaceful by finishing everything on your list. This is the weaver who thinks the work is never done. But the work of life is not a final product. It is an ongoing, shifting process. You can rest even when the work is unfinished. You can stop for a moment to breathe, to look at the sky, or to simply enjoy the feeling of the floor beneath you without needing a reason. The world will not unravel because you chose to take a breath. The tapestry will hold its own weight. Notice the small, everyday acts of discipline that actually help you. A pause before you answer a difficult email. A conscious decision to let a frustration pass without commenting on it. The simple act of washing your hands with full attention. These are the small, quiet stitches that support a peaceful life. They are not grand gestures. They are humble, mundane, and entirely effective. You do not need to be a master of the spirit to practice this. You only need to be willing to bring your awareness back, again and again, to the present moment. When you are out in the world, in the middle of a conversation or a busy afternoon, you can practice this quiet, internal movement. If you feel the heat of anger or the cold of self-criticism, use it as a signal. Stop, notice the physical sensation in your body. Give it a name, then let it go. You do not have to act on it. You do not have to hold on to it. You can continue with your day, carrying the feeling with you, but refusing to let it turn into a weapon against yourself. This is the true meaning of discipline. It is the ability to maintain your own center. Even when the wind is blowing hard, you can care deeply about the people in your life without gripping them so tightly that you cut off the circulation of your own peace. You can love someone and still allow them their own path. You can engage with your work and still remain detached from the need for a specific, perfect result. This is the secret of the traveler who gave Eamon the stone. He did not ask Eamon to stop caring about his cloth. He asked him to stop fighting the movement of the silk. There is a way to be fully engaged with the world, and yet completely at rest within your own heart. As you look toward the morning, or as you look toward the next day, remember that you are not the one who determines the entire pattern. You are the one who is invited to work with what is here. The future will arrive in its own time, and it will bring its own threads, some smooth and some tangled. You will handle them then, as you handle this moment now, with the same simple, quiet breath. You are not a machine that must be calibrated to perfection. You are a person, and you are doing the work of being one as well as you can. If you find yourself worrying about the days to come, let that be the last thing you notice. For now, you do not have to solve the problems of tomorrow in the dark of tonight. You do not have to arrange the threads for the next section of the weave. The night is a time for the weaver to leave the room. It is a time for the loom to sit in the dark. It is a time for the heart to remember that it is not held together by your worry, but by the same mystery that holds the stars in the sky and the river in its bed. Let the final thoughts of this night be ones of release. You are not losing anything by letting go of the need to be the guardian of your own life. You are gaining the ability to finally truly be here. You are safe, you are held, and you are at long last someone who knows that the snags and the knots are not the end of the story, but just a part of the beautiful, messy, and ever-changing design. Now let the hands that have held the needle for so long simply open. Let the shuttle be still. Let the silk fall into the soft, quiet rhythm of your own natural rest. The work of the weaver is finished for now. You have spent hours in this room, following the movement of the thread, noticing the snags, and watching the loom of your own awareness. You have seen that the tapestry you are creating does not need to be forced into a rigid, flawless shape. The tension is leaving your fingers. The jagged needle is tucked away on the shelf. The silk is no longer being pulled taut against the weight of your own judgment. You can feel the change in the air of the room, a quiet settling of the dust, a slow cooling of the space where you have lived your life for so long. Let your eyes close if they have not already. Feel the heaviness of your own body as it sinks into the surface beneath you. You are like a finished piece of cloth that has been folded and set aside for the night. There is no more shuttle to throw. There is no more pattern to perfect. There is only the vast, dark space of the night, a space that is wide enough to hold everything you have ever been and everything you are currently becoming. You do not need to defend your history tonight. You do not need to explain your knots to the dark. They are already understood by the very silence that surrounds you. Listen to the rhythm of your breath. It is the only loom that matters now. It moves in, it moves out, and with every cycle, it creates a space that is free from the interference of the mind. You are not trying to catch the thread. You are not trying to mend the fraying edges of your past. You are simply allowing the breath to exist, a simple, natural motion that requires no effort at all. If a thought about tomorrow drifts into your awareness, let it be like a loose fiber that simply floats away on the current of the room. You do not have to grab it. You do not have to weave it into your evening. Just let it drift. Just let it go. The room is becoming a sanctuary. The walls are not boundaries, but a cradle for your rest. You can feel the coolness of the sheets, the weight of the air, the gentle pulsing of your own heart. This is the place where the weaving of the soul finds its true stillness. You have spent a lifetime trying to prove your worth through the perfection of your work. But tonight, you are learning that your value was never tied to the cloth. It was always in the weaver, the quiet witness, the one who can sit in the dark and feel the fullness of life without needing to capture it in a frame. Think of the river that flows past the weaver's hut, deep and dark and constant. It does not worry about the rocks it has passed, and it does not worry about the valley that lies ahead. It simply moves, following the depth of its own nature. You are part of that same, ancient flow. You are the water, and you are the path. You are the movement, and you are the rest. And when you finally stop trying to direct the flow, you find that you were never in danger of losing yourself. You are only in danger of forgetting where you truly belong. You have no more tasks to complete. The loom is silent. The light is soft. The world beyond this room is fading into a distant, gentle blur. You are entering a state where nothing is required of you. You do not need to be strong for anyone. You do not need to be consistent for the sake of your reputation. You do not need to be perfect for the sake of your peace. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be finished. You are allowed to drift into the deepest layers of the night, knowing that you are held by a reality that is far more durable than your worries. Your body is letting go of the habits of the day. The muscles in your neck, your shoulders, and your hands are loosening, finally finding the release they have been craving. The tension that you carried like a heavy tool is sliding away. You are becoming light, a simple presence in the dark, breathing with the ease of a child who has no tomorrow to construct and no yesterday to regret. The weaver is asleep. The loom is at rest. The tapestry of your life will wait for you. But tonight, it is enough to simply be the space in which the universe unfolds. There is a profound, quiet beauty in this surrender. It is not an act of defeat, but an act of deep, radical trust. You are trusting the night to hold you. You are trusting the silence to heal the parts of you that were torn by the friction of the world. You are trusting that you are enough, exactly as you are, with all your beautiful, uneven, and human threads. There is nothing else you need to say to yourself. There is nothing else you need to fix. The work of the day is done, and the grace of the night has finally arrived to greet you. Let the darkness wrap around you like a soft, familiar cloak. You are safe. You are drifting into a place where the mind no longer speaks in commands, where the heart no longer beats in anxiety, and where the soul finally finds the home it has been searching for. Everything that bothered you today is shrinking, becoming small, becoming distant, until it is just a memory that has no power over your peace. You are letting go of the shuttle, letting go of the needle, and letting go of the need to be anything other than this moment of quiet, breathing rest. As you sink deeper into the silence, feel how your existence is not a burden to be carried, but a gift to be received. You are a part of the vast, shifting, and miraculous pattern of the world, and you are playing your part perfectly, just by being here, just by breathing, and just by finally allowing yourself to be still. There is no one to judge you, and there is no one you need to judge. There is only the breathing, the darkness, and the profound, gentle promise of a rest that knows no end. If the peace you have been searching for was never a thing to be achieved through labor, but the quiet awareness that remained when you finally stopped trying to fix the world, what else could you possibly be waiting for?